A knife stabbed straight into my heart. Emily, my wife, who I loved dearly, was not only cheating on me with Mark, a colleague she always praised, but also having an affair with Michael, my best friend. What was more painful was that Mark was the right-hand man of my biggest business rival, who was trying to destroy my career. This betrayal not only broke my heart, but also threatened my reputation and the future I had worked so hard to build. That day, when I received the text message from the private investigator, my first feeling was not shock, but a numbness that made me unable to react. Emily just left Mark Carter's apartment. This is the third time this week, the short text message said, but it was enough to shatter every remaining piece of my belief. I sat frozen in the SUV parked on the side of the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Mark Carter, the name was familiar. He was Emily's coworker, someone she'd always praised at family dinners. But now he was more than just a coworker. He was destroying the marriage I'd spent 7 years building. And what made me angrier than anything, he wasn't the only one. As I was digesting the information, another email from the detective popped up on my phone. I opened it, and this time, anger swept through like a storm, sweeping away any remaining emotion. In the photo, Emily sat across from Michael Ross, my best friend, in a coffee shop. The two of them were laughing, their eyes locked with an intimacy I hadn't seen from Emily in years. Michael was more than just a best friend. He was a brother to me, someone who stood by my side at my wedding and told me he would always be there when I needed him. My heart was crushed, but not because of love. It was a collapse of trust, a collapse I could not have foreseen. Memories came rushing back like slow motion. Nights Emily would come home late, citing unscheduled meetings or last-minute work. Texts she would smile at, then immediately delete when I walked into the room. I had been suspicious, but I told myself I was too suspicious. But it turns out I was right, and the truth was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. I don't know how long I sat in the car, the streetlights bouncing off the windshield in flickering patches of light and shadow. But when I looked up at the small box on the seat beside me, a gift I'd made for our 7th wedding anniversary, I knew I had to act. No, I can't confront her directly right now. Emily is too good at turning the tables. If I confront her without a plan, I'll only get lies and excuses. I took out my phone and scrolled through the photos and evidence the detective had sent me. Every text message between Emily and Mark, every conversation between her and Michael, it was like a sentence hanging over her head. But I wanted more. I didn't just want her to confess. I wanted her to face it all, right in front of me, with no way out. And that's when I decided this anniversary dinner wouldn't be a night of reconciliation, but of theater. I made reservations at Emily's favorite restaurant, where we'd celebrated many milestones in our lives. I even picked out her favorite red wine and ordered a bouquet of white roses. Everything had to be perfect, so no one would suspect that this was anything other than a romantic evening. As I entered the restaurant, the flickering candles and soft music greeted me as if this were a special occasion. But inside me, a fire of anger was smoldering. I wasn't here to celebrate, but to end it all. I sat down at the table, set the gift box on the table, and stared at it. A final gift for Emily, but not a token of love. It was a farewell, the end of a marriage I had thought would last forever. The rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed across the polished wooden floor as Emily entered the restaurant. I looked up, my eyes immediately meeting her familiar figure. Emily, in her tight red dress, looked radiant and confident as always. Her full red lips and the slight smile on her face made me feel a little confused. How could someone hide a lie so perfectly? David, she said my name in a familiar sweet voice, as if there was nothing unusual about our relationship. Have you been waiting long? I stood up and pulled out her chair with the grace of a perfect husband. Not long, I replied, keeping my face impassive. I just wanted to make sure tonight was special. She smiled, her eyes glancing at the gift box on the table. I have a feeling you've got something wonderful planned. I always love how you make things special. Yes, I said, taking a sip of wine to hide the cold smile that was threatening to form on my lips. Tonight will be one I will never forget. She sat down, her face glowing with anticipation and comfort, but I noticed that the hand holding her glass was shaking slightly. Perhaps Emily sensed something was wrong, but she, as always, was confident that she could handle the situation. Dinner started with exquisite food and a light atmosphere. Emily talked about work, her colleagues, and even mentioned Mark Carter as a way to distract me. She told me that he was extremely talented and had helped her a lot with recent projects. Mark is a very thoughtful person, she said, looking into her glass. He always knows how to work well in a team. I nodded, keeping my composure. I'm sure he really cares about you. Emily looked up, a flash of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly smiled. David, why do you say that? You don't think that me and him. No, no, I interrupted, chuckling. I was just complimenting him. Anyway, I'm grateful you have good coworkers. She smiled, but it wasn't as natural as before. I could feel the worry creeping into her. Emily had always been confident that she could hide everything, but tonight I would dispel that illusion. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a photo, and held it up to her. Emily was standing in the doorway of Mark Carter's apartment, clutching a familiar bag. The smile on her face in the photo was radiant, a smile I hadn't seen in months. Emily looked at the photo, her eyes wide. I could see a flash of panic in her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. David, this isn't what you think. Oh, really? I asked, my voice even but sharp. Then, how do you explain the fact that you've been to Mark Carter's apartment 3 times this week? It's just work, she replied, her voice shaking. He needs my help with some important documents. At 9 o'clock at night? At his own place? I raised an eyebrow. Emily, do you think I'm an idiot? She bowed her head, saying nothing. I let the silence drag on, like a knife cutting deep into her fragile defenses. Emily, I continued, my voice low and sharp. Tonight is not just an anniversary dinner. This is a time for us to talk about the truth. Emily stared at the photo I'd placed in front of her. For a few seconds, she seemed frozen in shock and panic. But, like a veteran actress, she quickly regained her composure. She picked up the photo, frowning as if trying to decipher something. David, this is a misunderstanding, she began, her voice soft but defensive. I don't know why you have this picture, but I assure you, it's not what you think. I took a sip of wine, trying to keep my composure. Not what you think? Then explain, Emily. Don't tell me this is just a normal business meeting. She put the photo down, her eyes starting to flash with anger and worry. Mark is a coworker of mine. We needed to finish an urgent project, and he couldn't work in the office for personal reasons. So I went to his house to discuss work. What's wrong with that? Work at 9 o'clock at night? At home? I asked, my voice flat but full of meaning. Do you think I'm stupid enough not to notice something unusual? Emily opened her mouth to say something, but then stopped. I could see her struggling to come up with a convincing excuse, but her silence only made it all the more obvious. After a few seconds of silence, Emily changed tack. She placed her hands on the table, her eyes softening, her voice soft and emotional. David, I know we've been apart lately. I admit that I'm not perfect, and that I probably haven't spent enough time with you. But you have to understand that the pressures of work sometimes cause me to make bad decisions. I shook my head, smiling faintly. Emily, what are you trying to do? Make this my fault? No, it's not like that, she said quickly, her eyes filling with tears. I just want you to know that I didn't mean to hurt you. It was all business, and I never thought it would be taken this way. Misunderstanding? I raised an eyebrow. What about these messages? I took out my phone and opened the series of messages between her and Mark that the detective had collected. Each line was a knife stabbing deep into my heart, but now I no longer felt pain. Emily stared at the phone screen, her lips pressed together. She couldn't deny it when the messages appeared clearly. I miss you. Can't wait until next time. Today was great. You always know how to make me feel special. Is this your job? I asked, my voice full of sarcasm. She didn't answer, just bowed her head. I could see her shoulders shaking, but I couldn't feel any more pity. She didn't deserve my pity anymore. As Emily was still lost in confusion, I decided to strike again. But Mark isn't the only thing we need to talk about tonight, I said, my voice cold. She looked up, her eyes filled with concern. What do you mean? I pulled up another photo on my phone and pushed it toward her. This time, it was of her and Michael Ross, my best friend, sitting in a small cafe. They were laughing and joking, their eyes locked with an intimacy I hadn't seen from Emily in a long time. Emily gasped, her face pale. David, this isn't what you think, I sneered. Not what you think? So, how am I going to explain that I see Michael after every business trip you take? Or the messages you thought I would never read? Emily shook her head, tears starting to fall. David, I admit I was wrong. But Michael and there's nothing. He's just a friend. You? I raised an eyebrow. Then why did you text him, I wish we had more time together? And why did he say, David doesn't need to know? This time, Emily couldn't answer. Tears were streaming down her face, but I didn't feel any pain anymore. Emily sat motionless, her eyes red, her lips trembling as she searched for the words to defend herself. But I didn't give her the chance to say anything more. Tonight wasn't her time to control the situation. This was my time to take it all back. Emily, I said, my voice sharp, I've heard enough of your lies. I didn't come here to hear excuses or apologies. I came here to end it all. She looked up, her eyes filled with panic. David, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can get through this. I smirked, a smile that I knew would make her flinch. Repair? Emily, I spent the last 7 years building this marriage, trusting you and loving you. And you? You chose to destroy it, not with one, but 2 men. And you think an apology is enough? She bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. But this time, I didn't feel pity. I took a deep breath, then stood up, looking straight at Emily. There's something you never knew about me, Emily. Maybe you thought I was just a normal businessman, a husband who goes to work every day and doesn't pay attention to what you do behind my back. She looked up, confusion evident in her eyes. What do you mean, David? I smirked. I'm not just a businessman, Emily. My cybersecurity company doesn't simply sell security software. I'm the head of a secret intelligence project where your every text, every call, and every move can be tracked. Her face paled, her eyes wide. David, you're kidding, right? No, I'm not kidding, I replied, my voice sharp as a knife. I knew everything. From the first time you walked into Mark Carter's apartment, not only did I know, I had all the evidence, from texts, emails, to pictures and videos. I pulled a folder out of my briefcase and placed it in front of her. Here's all the evidence, Emily, and if I want, I can send it all to the court, to your mother, and even to Mark Carter's company. But tonight, I want to give you the chance to end this without making a big deal out of it. Emily stared at the file, her hands shaking as she touched it. David, please, don't do this. I know it's wrong, but I love you. I just can't control myself. Love me? I asked, my voice full of sarcasm. Emily, you love me and yet betray me with 2 other men? You love me and yet lie to me every day? Stop insulting my intelligence with your lies. I looked straight at Emily, my eyes devoid of any emotion. Now, here's what's going to happen. I've prepared the divorce papers, and you're going to sign them right here. Emily gasped, as if she had been slapped in the face. Divorce? No, David, I can't lose you. Please don't do this. Emily, I've made up my mind, I said, pulling a stack of papers from my briefcase and placing them on the table. I have nothing more to say. You'll sign this, and we'll be done. You'll have no rights to me. All my assets are legally protected, and you'll only get what you brought into this marriage. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. David, please. I know I was wrong, but I love you. I don't want to lose you. Emily, I replied, my voice low and cold. You lost me the day you walked into Mark Carter's apartment. You made your own choice, and these are the consequences. She bowed her head, her hands shaking as she held the pen. Each stroke she signed felt like a knife cutting into her remaining self-respect. When she finished, I nodded and took the papers back. Emily, I said, my voice soft but powerful, tonight is the last time we will see each other. From now on, I will no longer be a part of your life. Live with your choices. Emily sat silently in her chair, her shoulders shaking, her face streaked with tears. She had been in control, but now she was just a failed actress on a stage of her own making. I no longer felt pain, only relief that this act was about to end. Emily, I said, my voice calm but sharp, I gave you more chances than you deserved, and you chose to destroy them all. And now, I have one last thing to say. She looked up, her eyes filled with despair. David, please, we can start over. I will change, I promise. I shook my head, smiling bitterly. Don't you understand, Emily? It's over. Not only did you betray me with Mark, but also with Michael, whom I once considered my best friend. Not only did you destroy our love, but you trampled on my trust. How could I ever go back to someone like you? I pulled another file from the briefcase beside me and placed it on the table. Emily looked at the file, her eyes filled with curiosity and fear. I knew she had no idea what was waiting for her. Here are the DNA results, I said, my voice as sharp as a knife. This is how I make sure the whole truth comes out tonight. Emily was stunned, her face pale. David, what are you talking about? You're saying that the child you always claimed was our loving bond isn't actually mine, I replied, my voice cold. The DNA test has proven that it's Mark Carter's. Emily's mouth fell open, speechless. I could see the panic and fear in her eyes. This time, she had no excuses. David, please, she cried, her voice breaking. Think of the child. He is innocent. Yes, it is innocent, I replied, my voice still even. But I am not. And the child will not change the fact that I betrayed you, lied to you, and made a fool of you. Emily burst into tears, her shoulders shaking. But I no longer felt pain or regret. I stood up, gathered my papers, and looked straight at Emily. I did everything I could to save this marriage, Emily, but you chose to destroy it. And now, you have to live with the consequences. She looked up, her eyes red. David, please, don't leave me. I know I was wrong, but we can start over. I swear I will change. I smiled faintly, a bitter smile. Emily, don't you understand? I don't love you anymore. Love cannot exist when trust is destroyed. And you not only destroyed my trust, but you destroyed everything we had. I pulled out my wallet and put a bill on the table to pay for dinner. This meal is yours, but from now on, my life will have nothing to do with you. I turned and walked away, leaving Emily sitting there in regret and despair. I didn't look back, because I knew I did the right thing. I walked out of the restaurant, but instead of feeling relieved, I was filled with a storm of emotions. Anger, disappointment, and regret swirled around me. I knew I'd done the right thing, but the right thing wasn't always easy. Every step away from Emily was another step toward reclaiming my life, but also another step toward severing everything we had shared. Emily sat in the restaurant, her face blank, her eyes staring blankly at where I'd left. Tears continued to fall, but no one in the room noticed. They were busy with dinner and conversation, unaware that right in the corner of the room, a marriage had just been torn apart. David, she whispered unconsciously, but only she could hear her plea. Emily picked up the document on the table, her hands trembling as she opened each page. Each line was like a knife cutting deep into her self-esteem. All the evidence, messages, photos, DNA test results, were the truth that she could not deny. As Emily read the last line of the document, she dropped it on the table, her whole body shaking. The beautiful memories of her and David came rushing back like a flashback. She remembered the candlelight proposal, the wedding vows, and the days he worked hard to give her a life that many people could only dream of. And yet, she had destroyed it all. Emily clenched her fists, tears streaming down her face. Why did I do this? She asked herself. But the answer was obvious. She'd been caught up in the novelty of Mark, entranced by Michael's closeness, and she'd given it all up, only to get nothing in return. She looked up, looked around the room once more, and realized that she was completely alone. I stepped out of the restaurant, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The air was filled with the scent of roadside flowers, but to me, it felt like a new beginning, a space free from lies and betrayal. For the past 7 years, I've lived with the belief that love can conquer all. I loved Emily sincerely, giving her everything from my heart, my time, my energy. But tonight, I realized that love cannot exist without trust and respect. And Emily, who was my whole world, chose to trample on it all. As I walked down the long street, a sense of relief flooded my heart. Not because I had gotten revenge on Emily, but because I knew I had taken back control of my life. In the days that followed, I focused all my energy on work. Instead of letting the pain linger, I used it as fuel for personal growth. My already successful cybersecurity company was now at the epicenter of innovation in the industry. The new products I developed not only protected data, but also detected and stopped threats before they happened. Gradually, my name appeared on the covers of prestigious business magazines. David Miller, the man who turned pain into success, was the title of an article about my journey. In each interview, I didn't talk about Emily, Mark, or Michael. I talked about my perseverance and determination to overcome adversity. I also opened my heart to a new relationship. Rachel, a smart, kind woman, always brought me a sense of peace. She is not only my life partner, but also a companion who helps me see life in a more positive way. With Rachel, I do not need to hide the pain of the past, because she always listens and understands me. One autumn evening, I attended a major charity event in town that brought together influential businessmen, artists, and activists. I was invited to be the keynote speaker, sharing my journey through adversity and how I had rebuilt my life. As I walked off stage after my speech, I saw a familiar face in the crowd, Emily. She stood there, silent, her eyes filled with regret. She was no longer the proud and confident woman I once knew. She wore a simple dress, her face bearing the marks of time and self-inflicted wounds. "David," she said, her voice choking, "I didn't think we'd see each other again." I kept my smile polite but emotionless. "Hi, Emily. Long time no see." She bowed her head, her eyes averted. "You've changed a lot. I always knew you were strong, but I never thought you would achieve such great things." I nodded. "Yes, life has a way of forcing us to change. I learned that from you." Emily was silent for a few seconds, then looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "David, I know I don't deserve this, but I want to say that I'm so sorry. I made the biggest mistake of my life losing you." I didn't respond right away. I looked at her, the woman who had once been everything to me, and realized that I no longer felt any hatred or pain. I had moved on, and she was just a part of my memory. "Emily," I said, my voice soft but firm, "thank you. Without you, I wouldn't be the person I am today. But now, I've moved on. And so should you." She didn't say another word, just stood there watching me walk away. For me, that was my final goodbye. After that fateful night at the restaurant, I began a new journey. One without Emily, without the lies and betrayal. It wasn't an easy road, but I knew that if I didn't do this for myself, I would be stuck in pain forever. In the early days after the divorce, the house became eerily quiet. No more familiar footsteps, no more shared dinners. But instead of letting the loneliness consume me, I poured all my energy into work. Work not only helped me cope with the pain, but also became a way for me to rebuild my life. I started focusing on developing new cybersecurity projects. Ideas that I had been thinking about but never had time to implement became my top priority. As each day passed, I realized that there is nothing more valuable than spending time and energy on myself. As time went on, my company not only grew, but also achieved more than I had ever expected. My latest security product quickly became an industry standard, used by major corporations around the world. My company not only protected data, but also helped prevent threats before they happened, a step that the entire technology industry admired. My name appeared on the covers of prestigious magazines such as Forbes, Time, and Wired. Articles praised my perseverance and determination, from a betrayed man to an icon of success. David Miller, the man who turned adversity into motivation. The title of one article made me smile, not because of pride, but because I knew I'd overcome it all. But success is not only about work. I started to allow myself to be open to new relationships. A special person appeared in my life, Rachel. She's a psychologist, smart, kind, and always knows how to make me feel at peace. Rachel is not only my life partner, but also a companion who helps me see things from a different perspective, positive and hopeful. Rachel knew about my past, but she didn't judge. Instead, she listened, empathized, and always encouraged me to move on. With her, I didn't have to hide my pain or pretend to be strong. 2 years after my divorce, I attended a major charity event in town. It was a special occasion, bringing together influential people from all over the country, from businessmen to artists to activists. I was invited to be the keynote speaker, sharing my journey through adversity and how I had rebuilt my life. As I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight shone on me, but I felt no fear or hesitation. I spoke about the lessons of pain, about how every failure can be an opportunity for rebirth if we look at it correctly. The audience listened in silence, and when the speech ended, the room erupted in applause. It was not a celebration of me, but a recognition of the journey I had overcome. As I stepped off the stage, a familiar face appeared in the crowd, Emily. She stood there, silently watching me. She had changed. No longer the proud, confident look of the past, Emily looked tired and a little embarrassed. She wore a simple dress, no longer the flashy jewelry she once loved. She had changed not only in appearance, but also in her eyes filled with regret. "David," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I didn't think we'd see each other again here." I kept my smile polite, unwavering. "Hi, Emily. Long time no see." Emily stepped closer, her eyes searching mine for a glimmer of hope. "David, I've heard so much about you," she said. "You've done amazing things I never imagined." "Yes," I replied, my voice calm. "Life has a way of forcing us to change, and I have learned a lot from what has happened in the past." She bowed her head, her eyes filled with shame. "David, I don't know what to say, but I'm so sorry. Everything I did, it was all wrong. I destroyed the most beautiful thing we ever had, and I know there's nothing I can do to fix it." I looked at her for a moment, feeling strange, seeing someone who had been everything now a distant memory. No more anger, no more pain, just calm, like looking at a closed chapter in a book. "Emily," I said, my voice soft but firm, "thank you for saying that. But the truth is, I forgave you a long time ago, not because you deserved it, but because I needed it to move on." She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "David, I hope one day you can remember me without feeling hurt." I smiled, but it wasn't for her. It was for myself. "Emily, I don't feel hurt anymore. But that doesn't mean I'll forget. I'm over it, and now I'm living a life without you being a part of it." I left the event, stepped outside, and took a deep breath of the cool air. I felt an indescribable sense of relief. Meeting Emily was not an emotional reunion, but a final goodbye. I had closed the chapter, and now I was ready for what was ahead. When I got home, Rachel was waiting for me. She looked at me with warm eyes, without asking what I'd been through, because she always knew that I'd overcome all difficulties. Rachel was not Emily's replacement, but a new part of my life, a part that I cherished and would never lose. That evening, as I sat at my computer, an idea struck me. I decided to donate a large portion of my company's profits to organizations that support people hurt by infidelity or domestic violence. I added a brief line to the press release. "For anyone who has ever hurt me, thank you for the lesson." The next day, when the news hit the papers, I knew Emily would read it. But instead of seeing it as revenge, I wanted her to know that I had moved on. And more importantly, that I had turned my pain into something good, not just for myself, but for others.